good afternoon. Thank you all for joining the third bootcamp session of this afternoon. TaxCalc time, take control of your practice's time management. Thank you to everybody who has come across from the previous bootcamp sessions that we've held this afternoon, and welcome to anybody that has joined for just this one in particular. These are short sessions. They only last 20 minutes. Its purpose is to give an overview of the time module in this instance, and hopefully give you some hints and tips for you to take away and implement into your practice. You may already be using time, and you may know quite a lot that I'm going to show you. You may be brand new to time, so just bear with me if there's things that you know already. It's important that we give a broad overview to suit everybody's needs in the session. I'm going to share my screen in just a moment. Before I do, just want to let you know that we are recording this session, so later this week you will receive a copy so you can watch back and implement anything that you took away. And also it is interactive, so please do ask questions as we go along. We have got either the chat function you can pop your questions into, or the Q&A box. Both are available at the top of your screen, and please do pop any questions that you have in there along the way. If I get a chance to answer them throughout the session, I will. If not, I'll make sure that they are answered towards the end of the session if I'm able to. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to look at the sort of basic setup required to ensure we've got time working effectively. We just check everybody's in. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Just admitting person in. Lovely, perfect. So I'm going to start within in Admin Centre to begin with. So just so we can see some basic settings we need to have configured for us to use time effectively. So I'm going to launch into Admin Centre. I'm going to start off within our user setup. So if we look at Phil, for example, could be any user. Within working hours and rates, we can set what Phil's working hours and rates are. So we've got the ability to set our practice default hours, which we'll look at in just a moment. But if, for instance, we were a practice that had 9 till 5:30 working hours, we could just leave this as is. If Phil, in this example, does work part-time hours or something different from our default default working pattern, we can override these default hours on an individual user basis. So we can make sure that that is set up accordingly for each individual user. Similarly, we've got the ability to input charge out rates. So charge out rates can be set against a user or an activity. If we set a charge out rate against a user, that takes precedence over the activity charge out rate. Okay. We can also set time parameters for which that fee is applicable for. So it could be that from now until the 31st of March, Phil's charge out rate is 31st of March is £50. But we know that Phil is going to increase his charge out rate from the 1st of April. So we could add another. Ensure that that is from the 1st of April, it's going to increase to £75 an hour. We can leave that to blank because it might not have an end date as yet. If once it's been reviewed, we could put that as a to date and again set from the 1st of April 2026 a new hourly charge out rate. So that is Phil's charge out rate across the board. Down here, we're able to set activity-specific charge-out rates for Phil as well. So if I search for annual accounts and add activity, I could set a specific annual account charge-out rate for Phil. So he might be charged out at £60 an hour for annual accounts, for example, and I can set that all within the user setup. Moving through the admin centre, so if I now go into applications, I open time application. Within the time, we can customise those working hours, like I mentioned. So if it wasn't 5:30 that my working hours were, but they were just 5 o'clock, sorry, I could tweak that in here. When I press finish and save, that would then be reflected in each of the users' default hours settings. And again, you could override that on an individual basis. So this is the practice level where we can amend that. Within the time application in Admin Centre, we can also change our time period. So if we record a minute, it's going to round up to 6-minute intervals. I can make that 15 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever we wish. And that's within Admin Centre practice level settings. I can also set when I want my timesheet to be completed weekly or monthly. With timesheets in mind, the next place I want to show you is the ability to create teams. So we would create a team if we need to set a timesheet approval process up in the system. I set one here, so I've got timesheet approval. And what this means is Callum and Tom, when they submit their timesheet, Danny would be given the permission to approve their timesheets. When Danny submits her own timesheet, it would be Nick who would need to approve Danny's. So it's within Admin Centre and Teams where we can set the hierarchy for timesheet approval. To have a look at now activity types, we're going to go into Admin Centre again, into Applications and Practice Manager this time. Within Practice Manager, we've got activity types, and this is a list of all of our client activities, either client activities and non-client activities. In here, this is where we can set our charge out rates for activities. So as opposed to them being user-based charge out rates, they can be activity-based charge out rates. So again, if we look at this annual accounts example and edit, within here, I can set the charge out rate for annual accounts. That's if it's default across the practice. And again, unless the user logs time and has a specific rate set up in their user record, this will be what it defaults to, unless there's a user charge out rate set up within the user record. And again, we can set from and to dates if, for instance, in the new financial year, you're going to raise your annual accounts fee, we can make that reflected in the system by setting those dates out here. So multiple charge out rates are an option. Whilst we're in activity types, I just want to bring your attention to this non-client activity. So there are some system default settings, so holiday leave, sick leave, administration, time off and lieu. If there's anything else you want to be able to record on a timesheet that isn't a default setting, either client or non-client work, we would simply press create and create whether it's client activity, non-client activity, and give a name for it. So it could be somebody wanted the other day exam leave as a specific thing to be able to feature on their timesheet. So they created exam leave as an activity type to be able to assign time against. So that's the general setup and some of the settings we need to make sure we've got configured to be able to pull through onto our timesheets and time logs and reports effectively. We're now going to spend a couple of minutes looking at how we can record time. So there are 4 main ways that we can do that. If I close Admin Centre and I open Imperial UK Limited, just want to bring your attention to this time widget at the top here. I'm going to open Imperial and my clock is going to start flashing. So that is saying you've opened a client record. Are you wanting to start recording time? If, for instance, I then go into accounts production, I'm open accounts production, my time begins flashing again. If I now click on this, I've got the ability to set a stopwatch to record time against the client in general or against the client's accounts production task specifically. We just hit play when we want to start, pause and stop. Whilst I'm in here, I may decide to open another client in accounts production. If I choose to do that, and we choose Beaumont Limited as an example, open that one. Again, my clock is going to flash. I've now got the option to start recording time against Beaumont Limited now as well. When I press stop, it's going to say that I've recorded a minute's worth of time, and I can save that, and it's going to add it to my time log. If we're not keen on using that stopwatch approach, you know, some people really hate that. They're never going to remember it, so it's not actually going to be an accurate representation of time logged. We have the ability to manually add time from this drop down here as well. So we can click add time, and through here we can log that time. So because it's not associated with a specific client record, we do have to search for them. So I could search for Imperial. Say yes, it is related to a job or task. So if I click here, okay, it's to do with their annual accounts. I can select that, and then I can say I spent 2.5 hours on there. Tick whether it's billable or unbillable, and I can save that, and it will add to my time log. Going back into that add time function, you might have seen this option up here, multiple entry mode. This option is useful for anybody that likes to do their time logging at the end of the day or the end of the week in bulk. And from here, we would then just enter that those time logs in line by line, client by client. So yesterday I did some work for Church Lane Limited, did their year-end accounts, for example, and I spent 3 hours there. On today, this morning, I did some work for Ryan & Co. Select, and I spent half an hour on that one. I can leave notes, and I can remove any logs that I want. I save, and that is that then going to add to my time log and timesheet. So there we've seen using the stopwatch, using the add time sort of manual process, and we've also looked at multiple entry mode. Before we go into the time module, just want to show you how you can also add time if you're using workflow and the dashboard functionality. From within here, I can highlight a specific activity type, and I can update the task. And when I've come in to say, yeah, I've completed that task, as well as completing it, I can also log time. It's going to bring up that same view that we're familiar with, that timesheet log pop-up, but it's going to assign it to that specific client and also that specific activity, not just the accounts job, it's the billing. So I could say that I put 0.15, took me 15 minutes, and then save. We're going to have a look at that. It will be in my timesheet log. So that's another way of logging time if we're using dashboards and workflow. So final area we need to go into, kind of most important, is the time module itself. So within the time module, we can view time logs. So this is going to show me all the time I have recorded in the system. I can filter this, so can say just show me my last week's, for instance. I can filter it by client type, work type, activity type, and whether I have sent it for approval and whether it's billable or non-billable work. Given the user's permissions, so I've got I'm logged in as administrator at the moment, so I can see everybody's time log. So I could toggle to Callum's, he's not logged any time. Toggle to Danny, I can see her time log. Obviously, within security roles, we set the permissions for individual users to ensure the right people can see the right people's time logs. And again, from this view, I can add log here. I just pop it back to me, sorry. So I could add log that time I've recorded. If there's anything that I've added in error, I could edit the log. If there's anything that I need to get to remove, so this 7.5 hours on administration, I could delete that log and delete it. Yeah. So that's time logs. Timesheets are also useful. So let me just put on current. I don't know what's going on there. So it's going to show me a 3-month overview of the time that I've logged in the system. I can, as you saw a moment ago, filter that to be a 6-month view, and I can see it by each week how much time I have logged. If I open this week's timesheet, I can see a visual sort of view of the time that I've recorded. I can edit this log by clicking on it. I can also adjust it by dragging and dropping it. So I could say actually that happened on Monday morning, for instance. So in here, I can then submit for approval, and then based on that team setting, it would go to whoever is supposed to be approving my timesheets. They would receive a notification to say you have a timesheet to approve, and if they are happy, they could then approve it. So they would have a similar view to this, and rather than it saying submit for approval, they could say accept timesheet or reject timesheet. You can also add time manually here too. In time, also we've got the ability to log ad hoc expenses. So if we've quoted a client meeting for accounts or something, account sign off, and it includes disbursements in the fee, we could add an expense, select a specific client. So let's use it as my example, and say it cost £50. I could say it was travel. Save, and when I come into my time analysis, that would be visible in Accountant Pro's time logged and expenses. Final parts of time are the reporting functions. So we've got WIP overview and we've also got time analysis. WIP overview shows us our WIP on a client by client basis. So if I expand here, I can then see minutes logged, the value, and I also have expected fee. I can just find a useful example. Apologies, just a second. So from here, I can view detail, and I can also select that I've billed it, close it, and that would then mark that as billed. So that's looking at WIP. We can see expected fee against value based on minutes logged, and so forth. We've also got time analysis, and with regards to time analysis, we can view that from a client's perspective, a work, so activity perspective, or a user perspective. So if we expand Danny's, we can see all the different times she's logged against different clients, and then we could filter this further by looking at billable, non-billable, client-specific, and specific users. We can print and export all of these reports, both the time analysis and WIP overview. And again, if we're using the workflow module from within Practice Manager and Work Management, we can also keep a track of time logged from this screen here as well. So that's just a nice extra for viewing how much time is being spent on a specific client, for example. So that 52 hours would be ringing huge alarm bells, and we could go and investigate that further. that is time in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions based on anything we've run through? I'm just going to check the chat and also the Q&A box. Both seem to be empty. So yeah, that brings us to the end of today's session. If you've got any further questions based on anything we've covered in today's session, or want to just know anything more, please reach out to your account manager. They will be able to signpost you to the right place and give you the correct solution. It's been lovely to spend the afternoon with some of you who've been on each of the sessions we've run this afternoon. So please look out for the recording of those sessions that you'll receive later this week. But other than that, thank you very much for your time today, and I hope you found that session useful. Have a good afternoon and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.